Hi, my name is Jim Schreiner. I'm the author of the controversial book, Jesus Christ, Enough Already. This is the book that my wife and I wrote, and it's about our spiritual journey throughout organized religion. Some of you may know that in April of 2018, my wife passed away from a very aggressive form of rheumatoid arthritis. And after she died, it's as if the door of my house had a revolving door, and everyone came in to pay the respects. But everyone also came in and had a different theory as to where she went when she died. And it hit me one day. I said, you know what? The world is fighting, literally fighting over two questions. I want you to imagine that this represents the first spark of life, as I call it, the first piece of life. The world is asking two questions. Where did it come from? And when it dies, where does it go? If you were to ask an Islam, a Buddhist, a Hindu, or a Christian, or a Catholic, or an atheist, they'll all have a different opinion. And if someone tells you that they know for a fact where it came from and where it goes when it dies, they're lying, because we don't know, and we may never know. But along this journey, I want to seek truth. So I began asking people, when my wife died, where did she go? And you'd be amazed at some of the questions and answers that I got. So my door just stayed open, and every single person that came in, I asked them those two simple questions. Where do we come from? And where did my wife go? And I think you would be surprised to hear those answers. So I said, you know what? I think the world needs to hear this, so I'm going to turn it into a television show. So I'm on my spiritual journey, asking everyone those two questions, and I want you to tune in to hear the answers. So follow me on my Jesus Christ Enough Already tour. The show is called Defending My Faith. Hi, Jim Schreiner here. I want to thank you for tuning into my show, Jesus Christ Enough Already. The show is actually called Defending My Faith. And as you may have saw in the open, after my wife died, I started asking people two very simple questions. I want you to imagine that this is the first spark of life. This is literally what the world is killing each other over. People want to know, where did it come from and where does it go when it dies? So I started asking people that when my wife died, where did she go? We cremated her body and spread her ashes in the Ormond Beach area, but where did her spirit go? If she had one, where did it go? So where did she go? So I started asking people, from religious leaders to just ordinary people, when we die, where do we go? And that's where the show idea came from. So thank you for following on my journey, and we're going to start asking people, when we die, where do we go? My first guest is a very dear friend of mine. Mike's been my friend for many years now, and I ran this idea by him, and he volunteered to be my very first guest. Hey, Mike, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure. So I'm going to ask you two very simple questions. Imagine that this is the first spark of life. Where did it come from? And when it dies, where does it go?
So this is the first question, where did it come from?
Where did it come from? Where did the first spark of life come from?
You know, we and I talked about, religion before, and I was, grew up Catholic, baptized Catholic. My mom converted Protestant, and I dated a Jewish girl for several years. And so, I'm kind of all over the place with religion and even with science. And so I don't have the answer. I think some people who try to say that they have the answer are lying, because no one really knows the answer. But for me, as someone who is not super religious and a bit of a kind of a realist, I think that where we came from is somewhere in this universe. Whether it is some sort of higher power, I don't know the answer. And same thing to where we go. I think that I do have a bit of a theory on this one. Okay. about where we go, and I think that we're here on Earth today as a living being, but also I think that we are in essence we're a vessel. And then when we physically leave this planet, I think that our spirit, whatever you want to call it, our energy, goes somewhere else into like another dimension. And that's what I think. Okay. And whether that is, follows the path of any religion or not, I mean, that's my answer, man.
You know, that's interesting you say that because it's, believe it or not, it's maybe a little closer to the lines of where I'm at. I was born in Catholicism into Christianity, and if you follow Christian principles, they will say that when I pass on, I'll be reunited with my wife in heaven. What do you believe as far as now when I pass on? Do you think our energies will connect again? Do you think I will see my wife again?
Well, yeah, I mean, so if you follow my theory in my school of thought, and I base this off of just what I believe, right? I just base it off of the information that I've read about or I've seen or even watched on television is, so if we believe, and also some of the real science, like you and I talked about this a couple days ago, every time we have a thought, it's a scientific fact that it does actually go somewhere. So that would lead me to believe that our energy also goes somewhere. And if you keep following that through, where you have people's energies connect, like you and your wife connect, that at some point your energy should ultimately, in wherever you go, connect with hers. So I don't think that that's unrealistic, and I don't think it's crazy to think like that.
Tony, you said science. In the last 10 years of my life, I've been studying so much science, and you start hearing terms like epigenetics and quantum physics and stuff. And we were taught in religion, in organized religion, to not look at science because, I mean, science was evil, but you had to just follow what the Bible said. But if you look at science, like you said, I've seen some amazing scientific studies where they can actually alter an atom or a molecule, and it affects not only that molecule, but it's almost like it's got a twin in another solar system, and it affects that, and that you can affect that with your thought waves and that type of stuff. You actually might have answered the last question was, how do you believe that you came to this theory? A lot of people say, like Christians will say, if I ask a Christian, well, how do you come to believe what you believe? Well, that's what the Bible said. And that's what the Torah or the Quran, Islam, the people say, well, that's what the Quran says. That's what they believe and why they believe it. So how did you come to this belief? Is it just through the books of science that you've read? How did you come to this idea or concept or belief system?
Well, having not been, someone who is not that religious, and also you and I talked about as well as a practitioner of transcendental meditation and learning a little bit about that, I haven't really searched for the answer like you are right now. So I haven't really thought a lot about it other than you and I just talking about yesterday and now. So my theory is really just a compilation of some of the things that I have read, having conversations with people like you and maybe, watching stuff on television. And it's ultimately just, my belief. You and I talked about prayer, at night, not all the time, sometimes, I pray, but who am I praying to and why am I praying? And I believe that I'm just talking to myself. And so, and some people may violently disagree with that and say, well, no, you're talking to God. And who knows, like you said, we don't know where we go. I mean, God could be you.
Right.
You could be God, I could be God. So
or could it be this energy that's around us?
Yeah. So I believe in the energy start because there is science that proves that. You talked about you and I were talking about it a couple days ago where people have been hooked up to electrodes to control a prosthetic limb across the room that's not connected by wires.
That's crazy.
So that's your mind that does it. And so when you talk about the law of attraction, and people say, well, the law of attraction. I'm a believer in success principles, and I've read a lot of different books in that world. And one of the books that I read was The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill, and he talks about it in I think 1920 or so about that very concept of the radio waves in your brain going somewhere. So if it's going somewhere, where does it go? Your answer, but does it ever stop? And so when you have that moment, like you and I have had over the past couple of days, where something happens and you think that...
It's almost like a premonition.
Yeah, you think that it just randomly happened. Well, I don't think that randomly happened. I think that we're still so young in the evolution of humans that we don't necessarily know, how to really use our brain. And you were joking about aliens before, and people talk about aliens and things like that. And, they see the pyramids and all these things that humans can't really necessarily explain. I think that there's a real possibility that aliens are essentially just the future of us. So and
different galaxies or solar systems.
If you believe in God as in Christianity, that shouldn't necessarily make people go bananas over the fact of what I just said.
Right.
Just because. I mean, again, it could just be the evolution of us, and so we know that there is evolution. We see it every single day. So it's We could sit here and talk about this for hours.
That's the point of the show, I think, and and I'll end it with that. And one of the things that I'm trying to accomplish on this show is, I jokingly said, I'm seeking truth, and we'll never find the answer to this. But more importantly, I just want the people watching to be able to hear the different opinions and hear the other theories, because I learned something early on. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was a devout Christian. And I said, well, how did you come to that belief? Why do you believe Christianity? Well, because that's what the Bible says. I said, well, is that the only book you've ever read? Or did you ever read the Quran, or did you read the Torah? Have you ever been to a Buddhist temple? Nope. Well, why? Well, because my parents told me that this was the book I should read. And I said, well, that's like saying, matter of fact, I was just telling our friend Jason that. I said, that's like saying, hey, what's the best tasting ice cream? Well, it's chocolate. Well, how many ice creams have you tried? Just chocolate. Well, how do you know it's the best tasting if all you had chocolate? Well, because my mom and dad said chocolate's the best tasting ice cream. Right. So that's my point. I'm seeking truth. We'll never find the answer to these two questions. But in the meantime, I want to hear the different opinions. I want to hear and I want to educate the person. And I said, when you're watching this show, I want you to be able to watch this show and listen to all the people, digest all the information, and stand in your own truth, to where you can say, you know what? You may say, you know what, I was listening to that Mike guy, and I need to look into that. That makes some sense. Or maybe I should listen to this Buddha guy, because this Buddha guy, man, that really makes a lot of sense. Or it's Christianity or Hinduism. I don't care. But listen to all of the evidence. Listen to all the theories. Then make up your own mind. And don't base it on what somebody else told you to believe. Don't base it what your parents told you to believe. Base it because you sought truth on those two questions. Where did we come from? And where do we go when we die? That's our very first episode in the can. So I want to thank you for tuning in to Jesus Christ Enough Already. We're on our spiritual tour called Defending My Faith. I hope you'll join me on the road. I'll see you next time. Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm Jim Schreiner. You're tuned in to Jesus Christ Enough Already. The name of the show is called Defending My Faith. And as I say in all the episodes, we're really only asking two questions. I want you to imagine that this is the first spark of life. This is the first piece of life. Where did it come from? And where does it go when it dies? So we're going to ask each person that. So that's your questions for the day. We're going to ask everybody on the show, because everyone's got a different opinion. I want you to imagine for television that this is the very first spark of life. Where did it come from? And where does it go when it dies? Recently, my wife died. And I asked everybody, well, you know, we cremated her body and I spread her ashes in the ocean. But if she did, in fact, have a spirit or a soul, where did it go? So we'll start with the first one. Where do you think the first spark of life came from?
I've thought about it a lot. And personally, I think it all derives from energy. It's all about energy. And I think somehow the stars aligned, the right circumstances, and the energy created life. And when we die, our so-called souls, our energy goes back into the mix.
Back into the universe.
Absolutely.
Do we have access to that energy? Like, can I somehow tap into that energy as a living being now?
Certainly. This is why I think that people are so focused on organized religion. When we get together as groups, large numbers, or even smaller numbers, but more than 3 people, that energy comes together, and you feel that energy. And because you want to believe in a higher power, you want to believe there's something after death, you take that energy and you use it to satisfy your own thoughts. And people feel that.
Right. So as far as an energy out there, when I die and my energy goes back into the universe, do you think my energy will be connected to my wife's energy in any way?
That's a tough one. Again, I think it's what you might want to believe, and it is definitely possible, but no one has that answer for sure.
If we knew that answer for sure, I wouldn't have a TV show.
No.
So I jokingly said, after my wife died, it's like I had like an epiphany, and it just came over me. I said, the world is killing each other, literally killing each other. They're trying to find the answer to those two questions. I mean, Islam is pointing the fingers at Christianity and say, oh, you guys are all going to hell. And Christians are pointing the fingers at Islam and saying, you guys are going to hell. Then I go to a Buddhist temple and they have another theory. And I start talking to other friends and they're talking. So that's how I came up with this idea. I said, you know what? I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. But I think the world needs to hear all the different opinions. I think the world needs to hear what their opposition thinks and feels and considers, because I am on a spiritual journey. When my wife died, I'm struggling with the fact, am I ever going to see her again? I'd love to be able to see her again. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to educate the consumer on what other people believe. And that's how we started this show, Defending My Faith. And man, I can't appreciate your time. Matter of fact, I absolutely loved your answer. I love the energy philosophy, and you know, I have to admit, I'm kind of leaning that direction in my life. I might be a little bit younger than you, but I was born in Catholicism and Christianity, and I'm actually leaning more towards the energy. I believe we're surrounded by energy. I think we can influence that energy, and obviously, I'm hopeful, and I believe. I have no evidence. But I believe in my heart that when I die, somehow I'm going to be reconnected to my wife. I believe that. And so I have to hang on to that.
Well, again, that's a beautiful thought, and it's something that you want to believe in. And this is where the word faith comes in.
Right.
So you have to have some kind of faith. Everybody has to have some kind of faith. Even if you're not sure what it is, it's that faith that drives us and keeps us going.
Right.
And it's that faith that tells us we got to be good to our fellow man.
Right.
When you lose that faith, that's when you start to have problems.
I love that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually, before my wife passed away, we started a movement, or we got involved in a movement called humanism. And we actually are making t-shirts right now. The definition of humanism is humans helping other humans. And I said, you know what? We got to stop fighting over this. We got to agree to disagree, and we can all have different opinions. But in the meantime, we've got to learn to get along. Why can't the world just agree to disagree, and let's just be kinder to other humans? So we started practicing humanism. It's not a religion. It's not really a belief. It's just the fact that humans need to step up and start looking out for other humans. Doesn't matter about sexual preference, doesn't matter about race, color, creed, or organized religion. Humans need to look out for other humans, because in the name of some form of religion, we've done more harm than cancer. So I said, in the meantime, while we try to seek the truth on these two questions, let's learn to play well. Let's learn to get along. So I'm glad you brought that up.
It's about respect.
Exactly.
It's about respect. I respect all religions. They may not propose or
agree
ideas
with,
that
yeah.
are agreed with how I feel, but I still have to respect that.
Right.
And when we lose that respect, that's when we have wars.
Yep.
Because we've lost respect for another person's point of view.
Exactly.
And we try to enforce our point of view onto them. And this is where all the problems are created.
Exactly.
And it's been going on since the beginning of time.
Yep. Yep.
The Crusades.
Yep. The
I mean,
Holocaust. Yep.
It's all about a lack of respect for
Somebody else's opinion.
someone else, and humanism, like you said.
Right.
We're all human beings. We don't have all the answers, but we have to keep open minds about what's going on out there and be able to respect someone else's opinion. The way I say it, if you're not raining on my parade,
Right. I won't rain on yours.
you're okay with me.
Right. Right. I like
You know?
that. Yep. Yep.
So you can believe what you want to believe, as long as it's not adversely affecting someone else's belief. There is absolutely no reason why a Roman Catholic, a person born I was born Roman Catholic. I kind of lost my faith in that organized religion, but not my faith in humanity and in this energy form of, you know, what we can call it God.
Right.
We can call it whatever we want. It doesn't matter. But when people start to, you know, try to impress upon other people their beliefs and actually try to control that person,
Right.
I think is what a lot of it's about, that's when the problems really start.
I totally agree. That's why we got to start practicing humanism. Man, I can't thank you for being on the show. Fantastic
Yeah, I
information.
appreciate it.
Man, I appreciate it.
Appreciate
I
it.
would
It's a
tune into
pleasure.
this show. I would. That's good stuff.
Sure thing.
It's funny. I just did a lecture just the other day on this, and there's like 8 predominant religions that are dominating. You know, if you look at, there's 2 billion Christian, there's about 2 billion Islam, and then you got, Hindu and Catholicism, Christianity, all the way down to, atheist and Buddhism. And there's about 8 different predominant religions. And like you said, though, each and every one of them are saying, nope, we're the ones. We have the answers. We're the truth. They're lying. And so that's my job, is I want to try to sift through all that information and try to let people see through the different opinions. I'm not judging. I'm not saying that your opinion's wrong or that mine's right. I just want to show the consumer that there are different ways to look at it. And most importantly, in the meantime, as we seek the answer to those 2 questions, we've got to play nicely. Humans need to look out for other humans, and that's a cause I think we can all get involved in. So I thank you for tuning in to Jesus Christ Enough Already. The show is called Defending My Faith, and I hope I gave you a little bit of truth today, and I'll see you on the road. Hi, thanks for tuning in. The show is called Jesus Christ Enough Already. I'm Jim Schreiner, and today's episodes we call this show Defending My Faith, and we ask people many questions, but most importantly we ask the 2 questions. This is the first spark of life. And this is what people are literally killing each other, wanting to find out. Where did this first spark of life come from, and where does it go when it dies? So my guest today, Jason Burnaby, is an old friend of mine, and I dragged him kicking and screaming on today's show, but he reluctantly, or he came on as a friend of mine. And let me ask you, where do you think let's start this way. Were you brought up in any type of organized religion?
I was born Catholic. My parents are both Catholic.
Okay.
So we were born believing that God created us.
Okay.
And I believe that to be true.
Are you still that?
I
there
still
now?
have that belief.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we know exactly what God might be. God, I believe, is some great, powerful energy.
Okay.
And I believe some of that energy comes and gives us life. And I believe maybe when we die, our body dies, and some of that energy, or that life, goes on. I don't know if it's heaven, like everyone might, think of, believe and think heaven is, and what it looks like, in the clouds, and looking down. It just might dissipate. The energy that's in us goes on, and
Well, obviously, I was born in Catholicism too, so they taught, that there's a heaven and hell, and that this creator of the universe, the God, is, going to condemn people and send them to a certain place, heaven or hell. Do you still believe in that God, the one that they talk about in the Bible, the Catholic God?
yeah,
Okay.
I would say so.
Okay,
And I think maybe based on how you live your life, your energy goes different ways.
I see.
And if you don't live a good life, your energy basically goes to
Good goes
hell.
south. Right.
Go to hell.
If you don't live a good life, you're good goes south. So obviously, my wife was an amazing person, and she always had good energy. So according to the Catholic and Christian belief, her energy should have risen and went to a better place. So you think she went to a place they call heaven?
I think so.
Okay. So
If anyone, she would have.
she would have. Do you think that I will be connected with her again when I pass?
Yeah, I think your energies will
Find each
find
other?
each other.
Cool. Do you, now that you were born and raised into Catholicism, do you still practice it? I mean, do you still go to church and that type of stuff?
No.
So, okay. So you don't practice the organized religion. So I guess the last question I'd say, so your belief system now, is it based just on what you were taught then as a child through Catholicism, or have you even thought about it anymore throughout life?
Yeah, I think about it quite a bit. And
You read
as
books
people
or
in my
anything?
family, friends pass away, it makes
Yeah.
you begin thinking about it again and again. And I don't think it's exactly what I don't think humans really understand what heaven and hell may be, and what your spirit is. We'll find that
We'll find out one of these days,
We'll
right.
find out at some point.
That's right, right. Well, that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, Jason. I'm trying to seek, like I jokingly, I said, I don't think we're ever going to find the answer to those two questions. I just think it's important as a society, as a world, as a humanity, that one of the gentlemen that was on the show earlier said it perfectly. We just need to learn to get along, and I don't have an opinion. There is no right or wrong answer. What we're trying to seek is just the different opinions so that people can look at the different theories and the different options is what I'm trying to accomplish here. And like I said, I don't judge anybody, and I won't disrespect someone's belief. I think it's a beautiful belief, and I'll respect that. And that's what I want to do is I want to continue to ask people the important questions so that the people viewing can say, you know what, maybe I'll give them a different perspective. Maybe they'll look at it again. I said the other day, I started to go to a Buddhist temple. I'm not going to be a Buddhist, but I went to the Buddhist temple because I think it's pretty cool. They have a neat way of understanding and explaining energy and where us humans are in this constant life cycle of reincarnation and that stuff. I just think it's pretty amazing theory. I don't necessarily believe it, not all of it, but I think it's still part of my education process. I'm on this journey of understanding the different beliefs and the different religions and the different theories. And I think that's how you find the truth, and that's how you find your own belief. I want people to have their own belief. I don't want people to have a belief that was based on maybe what their parents said or their grandparents said. I want them to have their own belief. As you know, I use a term called standing in my own truth. I want to stand in my own truth, but that truth has to be based on weighing all the evidence. And that's what I'm trying to do.
I was going to say, I think a lot of these religions, they are intertwined somewhat. I think there's a lot of overlap, and it's all the same God, all the same higher, power.
Yeah.
And, maybe there's bits of truth in
In
all of them, together.
I would agree with that. It's funny you said that. I said that I built a PowerPoint because I do a lot of seminars and stuff, and there's about 7 to 8 different predominant religions. I mean, there are like 3,000 gods if you go back in history from Thor and Zeus. In history, there's like 3,000 gods, but right now there are predominantly about 7 to 8 religions, from Islam to Buddhism to Judaism to Catholicism, Christianity, blah, blah. And each one of them seem to have a common thread, a little bit of a common thread, and they have just different pieces here and there, but they all have, there's a lot of commonalities in there. And that's why I said I want people to look at the different ones and be able to say, you know what, maybe I should look at that one, or maybe I need to study this a little bit more. So that at the end of the day, that's what I said, if somebody says to me, hey, Jim, I'm a Christian and I'm standing in my own truth. Well, did you weigh all the other evidence? Yes, I did. I watched your show and I understand all that, but I'm still confident in my truth. I'm cool with that. But I just want people to stand in their own truth based on their research, based on their fact finding, not just because that's somebody else.
I think we also have to remember too, the people that wrote these books, the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, they were humans,
right?
And if a human would have this much, brain power compared to God, which would be this,
right?
And so the humans, we might not truly wrote down, and we didn't understand it. We didn't write exactly what it is because it's beyond our comprehension.
Right.
So
I think that's where it actually gets a little bit complicated. And as I'm studying this and as I'm speaking with these leaders, the people who represent the Quran believe that book is, as a matter of fact, they say it's the last word. They say, hey, our book is the divine word inspired by God, and He directed the authors, and it's His words. Well, it's the same thing Christianity says. Christianity says, hey, the Bible is in fact God's words because He inspired the authors to write it exactly how it's written. Well, the struggle I have with those two individuals is you got 2 billion Islam, and you have 2 billion Christians both making the exact same claim. Wait a minute, ours is the inspired word of God. No. Ours is the inspired word of God. Who knows? Maybe they're both right, maybe they're both wrong. And that's what I'm trying to do on the show, is to show people that there are different opinions. And that in all reality, if somebody says, we know exactly where life came from, and we know exactly where it goes when it dies, they're lying, because we don't know. We've never known it from the beginning of time, and I don't think we'll ever know it in my lifetime. So that's why I want to educate people on the different opinions and theories, and that's why I started the show. So I thank you for your time. You're the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. That was another episode of Jesus Christ Enough Already. I hope you'll continue to follow me on my journey as I seek truth. I'll see you on the road. Hi, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Jesus Christ Enough Already. The show is called Defending My Faith, and we're going to continue to ask the questions it seems like nobody wants to ask. But as some of you have been tuning in before, when my wife passed away, everybody was coming to my house, and I had this idea. I started to ask people two very important questions. Where did we come from? And when my wife died, where did she go? So I want you to imagine that this is the first spark of life, and I'm here with my friend Garrett. Garrett, let me ask you, this represents the first piece of life. Where did it come from?
Can I go to the second one? I'm going to answer the second one first.
All right. We'll back up then. The second question is, because those two questions are actually intertwined. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said if we knew where the first one came from, we could probably figure out where the second one goes. So let's go to the second
reverse
one.
engineer it.
Yeah, exactly, reverse engineer. So let's say when my wife died,
Yep.
where did she go?
I'm going to answer that question with the 7-year-old version of myself,
Okay.
if you will. Because I believe, if I can remember back in time, that around that time when I lost my grandmother, one of my first grandmothers, and first time dealing with death at a pretty young age. You know, I know people have experienced it before the age of 7, but that's when I personally did. So, and I would find myself in my bed talking to her.
Now, this is after she's passed.
After she's passed,
Okay.
I'd find myself looking basically up at the ceiling, where I
Sure.
going through the ceiling up into the sky and talking to her. And this is obviously based on, I was brought up as raised in the Christian church, Christian faith, Protestant religion.
Protestant, okay.
And was, pretty much raised to believe that there is a heaven. So that's basically what I was doing. And over the years, as I lost more loved ones or friends close to me, things of that nature, I've always held on to that. So I've always thought that they're up there, they're somewhere, okay. And I don't know where. I don't know if it's heaven, but you know what? They're there, and everyone that I've known that are no longer here, physically with us, they're there together, and they are waiting for me.
Okay.
At some point. And so that, obviously, there's no proof in that.
Nope.
But that is what, I've heard you've talked with other people, and it's a comfort factor, if you will.
That's what I was just going to ask you. I said, do you think that is because, you think you believe this because it just makes you feel better?
Absolutely.
And that's fantastic. No, that's fantastic. But do you actually believe that? And then when you pass, do you honestly, in your heart, believe that you will be with them again?
I do, and I always have.
Perfect.
And I don't consider myself the most religious. But if you go down that path and you say, okay, well, and people who struggle with their faith or kind of overindulge in their faith, if you will,
Okay.
say that you have to devote a certain amount of time, a certain amount of thought, a certain amount of prayer, or you're not going to go there.
Right.
Right? Isn't that the
Right,
case with
right,
some
right.
people that just
Yep.
I don't know if overindulge is the right word, but
A lot of
more
organized religions
fanatical.
almost have, rules and regulations.
Rules,
You have to do
regulations.
certain things to get in, yeah.
Right, exactly. So I'm not on that level. So, but I don't care, because I do, since the age of 7 years old, and I always believe that they are there waiting for me, and they are looking down to a certain extent. And
Let me ask you that. So explain that. Do you think that now, okay, so your grandmother's in heaven. Do you think she can see what you're doing? Do you think she can watch you grow up and be a man?
geez, I hope not. Grow up.
Not that she saw the bad stuff you did.
Yeah, no.
But do you
Just the
think
good
she's
stuff.
actually, just the good stuff.
Right.
Yeah, watching down.
Yeah, it's, only when I'm talking to them.
Oh, okay.
Or
okay.
when I'm thinking about them. Let's just say that.
Oh, that's
and,
neat.
And so, hey, it might be my own little thing, but it's just, again, it goes back to the 7-year-old self. Now, does that mean I think like a 7-year-old still? No, absolutely not. I like to think that I've been cultured and I've been experienced enough, traveled through the world and traveled to the United States and read enough and opened myself up to enough beliefs and ideas over the time that, I don't think like a 7-year-old anymore.
But you still
That's
believe
not my-
what you thought as a 7-year-old, though. Am I
It's just
correct?
because it's always
Right.
been inside of me.
But
Just-
through you, even though you've grown up and you've educated yourself and stuff, you still come back to what you believed as a 7-year-old. You're still at that same thought pattern that you still believe she's there watching you, and that when you die, you're going to see her again.
Absolutely. And I struggle with this too because, I lost my other grandmother just a couple of years ago. So there's a huge gap in between
Sure.
those. And she was 94 years old.
Right.
Bless her, ended up passing away in a car accident. You say, well, what the hell is that all about? You know,
Right.
You live that long, and that's how, and
Yeah.
then you start to question faith.
Sure.
Your faith in that respect. Sometimes you're like, well, how is that the way to go out for somebody that lives
Right.
such a full and complete life?
Right.
But again, I find myself thinking about her and talking to her on that level. It's just to, and then you ask yourself this: was this one of your questions, or am I just going to make this up?
Go ahead.
When does life end? Right. For example, people that my grandfather passed away from Alzheimer's. Does life end when that really started to kick in?
When his human body took its last
Or when
breath.
when it was,
That's the question. When
Right.
it's human, like when my wife died, she literally died in my arms. When my wife died and took her last breath, her human body here on earth stopped existing. Did her energy, did her soul, did her spirit then go to that better place at that point? Is that what you're asking? Then when you say, okay, somebody, when did death start?
Well, if we think about life as our basically just our collection of thoughts, and from the morning, the time we wake up in the morning till the time we go to bed at night, our belief systems, things of that nature, our memories, things of that nature. But when does, if you start to lose all of that, I'm getting a little
That's all
deep
right.
here, but
No.
you start to lose some of that. You don't recognize the people that you've loved around you, that you've grown with, and when does does life end there?
Oh,
You
I
know,
see.
when you
I
lose
see.
your mind,
Oh,
essentially.
like if you had Alzheimer's or
You're
dementia.
just starting to
okay,
lose
yeah.
your mind.
I think
You
most
just-
people would think that life ends when the brain stops, when you stop breathing, you take your last breath,
Right.
and they think there's a separation
Precisely,
between
yeah. Right,
mind
yeah.
and spirit. So when the body dies, like when my wife's body died, that's the magic question is if in fact she had a spirit or a soul, where did it go? Will I see her again? Is she in another dimension, or is she in the same dimension? Is she just in the molecules around us? Is she in the
Right.
energy? And that's what's incredible about this journey that I enjoy, is because we don't know, but it's fun trying to find out the different philosophies and theories of where is she. She could be right here in this room around us. She could be above watching us. She could be part of me. Some people think that I absorbed her and she's now part of me.
Okay.
So there's different theories and philosophies.
Sure. And the funny thing is, and I just haven't given this a lot of thought.
That's
and
perfect.
That's why the first thing that popped into my head was, when I was a kid, and we start to, and then I start to, because I have a 7-year-old son right now, and he and his daughter, my daughter, say goodnight to my grandmother.
Her grandmother
They
then.
knew.
Yeah.
That was their great grandmother. They say goodnight to every night before they go to bed.
That's
So
awesome.
I see that. That has reminded me of
Oh, your 7-year-old.
mine. And I didn't teach them that. That's just
Really?
I didn't tell them
Really?
say goodnight to Gigi.
Opportunity.
Yeah, they just
Somehow they picked it up on their own.
Yeah.
Do you think they saw you maybe praying to her and they just wanted to emulate you, maybe?
No, not at all.
Really?
No, it was pretty organic from what I recall.
Really?
Definitely. Yeah.
All right, so back to the first question then. We've
Yeah.
answered the second one. The first question, where did we come from? Where did that first spark of life come from? Where do you think?
Are you talking about my life or life in general?
Life in general. Where do you think the first spark of life, if that's what we're all arguing about, everybody, atheists will say, well, it was a big bang. Interesting, what I find interesting is at least atheists will say, we don't know. We think we know how we got here from that first spark of life, but no one knows where that piece came from. Right. Christians and Catholics will say, well, yeah, God created it. So where do you think that
Well, why
first...
can't there be a combination of the two? Why can't? I've always kind of believed in that. I've always
Okay, explain that. What do you mean?
Well, it's obvious that evolution does exist, right?
Right.
And then religion has come along since the beginning of time,
Okay.
right? Somewhere in between, right? Or that's what I always think. But I definitely believe in a higher power.
So you believe in a creator of that first spark?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And do we know who it is? We don't.
Well, obviously we don't, right?
Right.
Or I wouldn't have
So-
this show.
Right, and I've heard you talk about people have been not only arguing about it, but fighting about it for thousands and thousands of years. So it's just got to be a combination of the two. And whether or not that higher power is who some people think it is over who other people think it is, then there's no way of really knowing. But
So you think a higher power, God possibly created that first spark of life, and then maybe evolution took over from that point, maybe, or maybe a combination of the two.
possibly, yeah, possibly, yeah. But
Good.
it's that's it.
Perfect, Gary. Hey, thanks for being my guest. That's another episode of Jesus Christ Enough Already. I hope you'll follow us on our tour. The show is called Defending My Faith, where I try to seek the answer to those two questions. Where did life come from, and where does it go when it dies? I hope you gave you a little bit of truth today. You can continue to follow me, or you can go to jimschreiner.com, where you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And I hope you'll follow me on my journey, this spiritual journey. Jesus Christ Enough Already. I'll see you on the road. Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm Jim Schreiner. The show is called Jesus Christ Enough Already, Seeking the Truth. We call the show Defending My Faith. If you're just tuning in, my wife passed away, and after she passed away, I started to ask people two very important questions. Where did we come from? And when my wife died, where did she go? So I said, I want you to imagine that this is the first spark of life. This is what the world is literally killing each other. We want to know where it came from, and when it dies, where does it go? So any of you guess about those two very simple questions? So I have my friend Sean here today, and she's going to answer those two questions. So you want to start with the first one or the second one? The first one's very simple. Where do you believe that this first spark of life came from?
I'm not sure. I'm a Catholic, so I believe in, I guess.
Do you believe that what the Bible says then? I mean, if you're, let me ask you this. You say you're Catholic. Do you believe in Catholicism? So do you believe what the Catholics preach, that there is a divine creator and that the Bible is, in fact, the Word of God? And that's, because if that's true, that's what the Bible says where we came from. So.
That's what I want to believe. That's what, but I'm not like I don't practice.
Well,
I don't go to church
that's
these days.
fine.
I have, but that is what I like to believe.
That's perfect, though. That's what, and again, the word belief is we all have to have a belief. I think we all have to believe in something, and that's what we're struggling with as a nation, as a world, as a society, as a humanity. We're struggling with. And that's one of the reasons why I did this program, why I'm doing this, is because I want to educate people, and I say it in almost all the episodes. I don't have a position, and I don't judge anybody. We all have different theories and different beliefs, but what we need to work on is becoming a better human race. And in the meantime, I practice humanism. I said instead of practicing an organized religion, I think we practice humanism, which is humans helping other humans, while we seek the answer to those two questions, because we're always going to be seeking the answer to those two questions. So you believe that the first spark of life was actually created by the God, the creator of the universe, that the Catholics talk about, okay? So then that would answer, I would think would answer the second question, if you still believe in Catholicism, so you do believe that, let's use my wife as an example. We know that my wife, when she passed away, we cremated her body and we spread her ashes in the ocean. So when her soul left her body, where did it go?
So I like to believe that she is in heaven looking over us. We don't have proof, but that's what I like to believe.
Do you believe that she can see us today? Do you think she's watching over me?
Yes.
That's awesome. Do you believe that when I pass on that I will be reconnected with her?
Yes.
That's a great feeling. It's what just like you, I don't know. No one knows,
Right.
but I have to hold on to that fact. As a matter of fact, it was kind of funny. We're about to launch a campaign called a 30-day church-a-thon, where I actually visited as many churches and religious organizations as I could visit in 30 days. And I would talk to the pastor or the priest or whoever. And I was actually at a Catholic church, one of the most recent ones that I did. And it was interesting that the priest said, until I could come to terms in my brain that Julie was in fact in heaven and that I would see her again, I would never be able to work this out. Because my brain's a mess. I'm trying to understand why she died, where she goes, and I said my wires are crossed, and my wires are crossed. And he said, until you can 100% believe and know that she's in heaven and that you'll see her again, you'll never be right. And that was interesting because there's a part of me that almost has to believe that, because I'm still struggling with trying to figure it out. And if I have to tell myself that somehow I'm going to be connected with her again, which I do believe, otherwise I'm not sure I'm going to be able to survive this, because I believe that her and I were destined to be connected in this lifetime, and I believe that we were destined to be connected in the next lifetime. So that's where I struggle with. So that's exactly the answer I was looking for.
Sounds good.
Thank you for your time. That was another episode of Jesus Christ Enough Already. I hope you'll tune in each episode where we seek truth. If you want to find out more about our show, you can go to jimschreiner.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, and we're going to seek the answers to those two questions. Where did life come from, and where did it go? So I hope you'll join me on my journey, and I'll see you on the road. Hi, Jim Schreiner here, and welcome to another episode of Jesus Christ Enough Already. The show is called Defending My Faith, and we ask our guests two very simple questions. I want you to imagine that this is the first spark of life. Where did it come from, and where does it go when it dies? Got my friend Steve here today, and we're going to start off. Do you want to start off with the first question or the second question?
What's the first question?
The first question. This is the first spark of life. Where did this first spark of life originate? Where did it come from? Where do you think?
I guess I would say that I believe what science has come up with to date, that everything started with the Big Bang, and somewhere we're on the outer reaches of that, kind of right now, doing our thing. And it came out of that originally, and that is God.
Do you think that there are other universes and galaxies, or do you think that we're just the only universe?
I think they're finding out, or starting to figure out, that there could be other dimensions and other universes. There's a lot more kind of dark matter, antimatter, than there is actual matter. So I guess I do kind of believe. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around that thought and really understand it. But I kind of believe that's all part and parcel of God, and that's what we are. And
I've been trying to watch some of this, epigenetics and
What is that?
quantum physics. Epigenetics is the process that they believe, which I actually come to believe because I'm into health and wellness.
Right.
Epigenetics is the thought that you can actually change the cell structure in your body by your thoughts. They call that epigenetics, and it's genetics above. It's thinking above genetics.
Yeah.
As an example would be, like I'm actually a pretty good example of why that works, because I was born with poor genetics. I had a lot of heart disease, diabetes, all different issues. I changed my thoughts, and therefore I don't suffer from chronic disease. And they believe that epigenetics believes that you can actually change your thoughts to change the cell structure of your body, and they've pretty much proven it. Now you go into quantum physics. Now quantum physics is mind-blowing, because now they are proving that, now I can understand how my brain can affect the cells of my body, but now they're showing that your thoughts and your brain can actually affect the universe. And that's pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah, when you're observing something, right, you actually change. It's hard to actually experiment when you're watching things on a small enough level, on that kind of unified field level that they talk about, that it actually will change cellular structure outside.
Outside, just by looking at it, so that you can actually change your environment. You can actually alter the universe just by your thoughts. Now, I can understand by making a noise or your actions, but now they're trying to show that you can actually change. Now, I guess the questions, what some people would say, is that God?
Right.
What is that?
Yeah, I mean, we've all kind of experienced that at some point in time, right? I mean, I'm sure it's happened to you a lot of times. Like, you picture a friend and they call a minute later, or you know what I mean?
Scary. Matter of fact, did Mike tell you that? It's happened to him and I twice in the last week. I mean,
I feel like when you start to get in connection with someone more often, and you're on a certain level with them, that happens. You kind of build up those connections, and you can.
I've had so many uncoincidences. Like before my wife passed, we're sitting on the couch, and her niece was getting married the next year, and we were not going to be able to go to the wedding because my wife couldn't travel. We had talked to her niece in probably a year. Now, I know they probably FaceTimed or something, like Facebooked or something like that. But we had talked to her, and Julie said to me, hey, when you get time this week, we should call Samantha. I said, cool. Yeah, we probably should. And I'd like to talk to her. And I came and sat down. And then she says, now this is my wife, says, well, maybe we could FaceTime her. I go, okay. as I sat on the couch next to my wife, I looked down and her phone, it's ringing FaceTime. And I told my wife, I said, well, I'm not ready now. I just got out of the shower. And she goes, I'm not FaceTiming her. She's FaceTiming us.
Oh, that's crazy.
Blew my
That's
mind.
mind.
I'm like,
And that's
what?
happened to me so many times.
Oh, I know.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my God, Mike and I were just talking
And
about
what
that.
did
I
she
said,
say? Did she say that you guys popped into her mind?
Yeah.
And she decided to go.
Yeah, and what happened, because we called my wife Jules, because she was a jewel, okay? Well, Samantha went and got a jewel tattooed right
Oh,
here.
wow.
And had called us. It's a funny joke because she calls us and she's doing FaceTime and she doesn't have a top on. And she's got her boobs right there in the camera. And I'm like, hey, Sammy,
funny.
you know, bring it up a little bit. You know, I mean, she goes, Uncle Jim, you've seen him before. You know, I'm like,
too
it was
funny.
hilarious. But she's shown us this jewel because in memory of my wife,
yeah.
she got a jewel. But it blew my mind. I'm like, so I told my wife, I said, did you tell her we were calling her? She goes, I haven't heard from her in months. We were just talking about her. I mean, it's scary.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I look at. I'm like, this whole quantum physics things that alter the universe and stuff. So going back to that, so, you know, atheists will come back and say, well, okay, all that makes sense, but still it doesn't explain who created that first piece of life.
Yeah.
That's the magic question. Where do you think
I think
the first piece?
I don't think-
because the Big Bang says, well, that's how you and I got here after the first spark.
Right.
But they don't know where the first spark
Right.
come from. So where do you think that first piece of life came from? No.
It's all, I think it is, we are, and it is all part of one thing, a due happening that is the universe, that is, you know, whatever was, if there was a Big Bang and it was contracted into the smallest minuscule and then expanded beyond that. And there's, I believe it's Hindu that believe every certain amount of hundreds of thousands or millions of years, it finishes expanding and then comes back.
Oh, really?
And then
I've never heard
starts
that one
over
before.
again.
Oh, wow,
And
I've
it's
never heard
almost
that
just
before.
like pulsation.
Really?
On a completely macro, expansive
Oh,
level
okay.
versus the vibrations and pulsations that we experience every day
Okay.
on a daily basis. And I think it's all one thing. I think we're all part of one thing. There are, because of how different atoms vibrate and our cells vibrate at different frequencies, we'll bump into something. We can walk on the floor or walk on the ground because of, I've heard it described as like the way a fan, if it spins really fast and
Yeah.
you kind of finger would bump into it.
Yeah.
Our cells, and the harder something is, the faster that those protons and neutrons and parts of the atom are vibrating. But that's why we appear to be separate, and we appear to be separate from this table or this thing, but it's really
'Cause we're
all
vibrating
just
so fast.
an atom soup. We're part of one gigantic energy, which is why when we can almost telepathically know that someone's going to call
Right,
us,
right.
you know, or that they're thinking of us, or they know that we're thinking of them. And I think it's because we're all part of one unified thing.
What about now? We know when my wife passed, obviously had her body cremated, we spread her ashes in the ocean. Her energy, her life force, so what was left, her soul, spirit, whatever you call it, where did it go, do you
Right.
think?
I think it goes back into that energy. I think when-
Into the universe?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I think it just takes on that energy takes on a different form. You know, it's still all around us. I think maybe part of us, part of you. Really, I mean, if you think about it, you know, the universe is coming in and out of us all the time. You know, in the form of food and air and water, and even particles just drifting through us that are small enough that, you know, that they don't bump into the walls of our flesh or the table or so forth. So.
So you think her energy went back into the universe, so when I die and when my energy goes out, because I said this earlier and you may have seen, I have no evidence of it, and I don't know if it's just my Catholicism growth or my Christianity, but I believe there was a weird connection between Julie and I, and you probably saw it, but
yeah.
Julie and I had this connection that I can't explain. For 25 years, it's like we were literally intertwined in energy.
Yeah.
It's like we and people say that all the time. I mean, we were one. And when she died, I mean, it's like she took me with her. My physical body's here, but the rest of me's gone. And part of me just knows that when I die, I'm going to be reconnected with her. And again, is that just my Catholicism, Christian upbringing? I'm going to go to heaven, or we're going to walk in through the pearly gates, or is it truthful that, like in Buddhism, that my energy is a life force that's going to go out and our atoms and molecules are going to reconnect. I don't know, but again, it's just faith. My faith is it just a desire just to want to be with her
Yeah.
again? You know,
I
what is it?
understand.
What is it? And that's why I'm doing the show. I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand, because I want to be with her so bad.
Right.
And I'm like, and frankly, I don't care. Is it in heaven? Is it an energy force? I don't care. I
What
just
is-
want to be with her.
Right.
So do you believe that when I pass, that somehow our energies will come together again?
Right, and I do. I was raised the same way. I was raised Roman Catholic, and I think around maybe like 10 or 11, 12, you know, you're in CCD, you're in some, you know,
Yep.
school, you're going for your confirmation, and I remember asking my teacher, you know, we were talking about hell, and I found it really hard to believe that an all-knowing, all-loving being, God, this
Right.
external
Right.
God,
Right.
this old man with a gray beard
Right.
sitting on a throne in heaven, right?
Right.
would-
Casting people in hell, or, you know.
Right,
yeah.
and I had a hard time believing, because I knew in my own mind or in my own heart that I didn't think that even my worst enemy, what kind of enemy you have at 10 or 11 or 12, but you know, people
Sure.
bully you, or
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can bully them, this or that, you know. And I said, I don't know if I'd have my worst enemy burn in hell forever. So how would an all-knowing, all-loving
Loving
God
God. Right.
burn me in hell forever? Or even worse, I got a chance to believe. And I feel like sometimes you could be exposed to church or religion, or say Catholicism, and you just can't believe it in your heart, even if you want to. So that person's going to burn in hell forever. What about the people that don't get the chance? And I know
Right.
that's the point of missionaries
Right.
going out, to
Right.
give them the chance to be
Right.
saved, right? But what about those people that didn't get that chance? I find it hard to believe, you know. And I remember asking my teacher at the time, and she said she didn't believe in hell. And I don't know if you should be teaching this class.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know,
Yeah,
that's
right.
kind of your job. But as I got older and I heard a lot of more different perspectives, and a lot of what you talk about on your show, and I've seen you talk about with different people, I think it all goes to the same place. We're all getting to the same place. And
Just different pathways to get there.
different paths to get there, and different views on what that is, because we don't know. We can't know till we go there.
Right.
But I think we're all going someplace, and I think it's for the better. I don't believe that people burn in hell. I
Right.
don't think there's a negativity like that. But I do believe that, and you know, I believe in soulmates. I believe that Jules was your soulmate, you know, and you guys will be connected after you're gone. And I don't know whether it's in the form that we think about now, because
Right,
we're a
right.
system of memories
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. But I think
Her and
that
I walking on
energy
the
is
beach
connected.
together, holding hands.
Yes,
right,
I don't
right.
know how it's quite like that, or maybe it is, but I know that there is a purpose, and I think it's interesting, and it's great what you're doing to try to look at things from different perspectives to understand, not only for yourself but for
I appreciate
other
it.
people out
I
there.
think the world needs to do it. And I'm trying to make the human race
Yeah.
better. We're all trying to leave our mark. As a matter of fact, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson said, "Be ashamed to die until you left one victory for humanity." And you know, I think
like
I've
that.
done some pretty good things in my life, but I want to try to leave a legacy of making the human race a better human race. And as we're, so I
Get some
said,
common ground.
Exactly. I said. We can all agree to disagree. I have no
Yeah.
opinions. I won't judge you for what you believe. I'm not going to judge a Catholic or an atheist or a Christian. It doesn't matter to me. We're all trying to seek, like you said, the same answer. So in the meantime, I'm trying to figure out where we can find some common ground to where humans can look out for other humans and we can improve humanity in the midst of us trying to answer those questions.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll open some people up to seeing some other people's perspectives, because, you know, we're not doing so well at that these days.
I know, and interesting, I think you saw it, one of the earlier guests that I had, he said it brilliantly. He said, we just need to learn to respect other people's opinions, you know, and that's the problem with most of the organized religions that I've seen.
Yeah.
It's like an all or nothing. No, you're either on my team or you're on the other team, and I get to kill you because you're on the other team. We have to learn to respect other people's values and opinions. I can have a different opinion, you can have a different opinion, and we can still be friends.
Yeah.
So I said, I tell that people all the time. I've got atheists who are my best friends. I've got Christians, Catholic. I even a Buddhist guy that's a really good friend of mine. Look, believe what you want. Just don't force me to believe what you want. You respect my belief, and I'll respect your belief. And like I said, we can play well with others.
Yeah. There's
Thank you
more
for
of
your
that.
time, Steve. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Hey,
Jim.
that was another episode of Jesus Christ Enough Already. I actually enjoyed that episode because I think Steve and I might be on a pretty close to the same wavelength as far as energies. I believe that somehow we're all connected to this energy. I feel it every day. I still feel like that Julie's somehow a part of me, even though she's gone. It's just, I can't explain it, but I still feel connected to her somehow. And I do believe that when I pass on, somehow her and I are going to be together again. Matter of fact, as she died in my arms, I whispered in her ear for almost 2 hours. I don't know how, but I'm going to find you. So I hope that I educated you today and we saw truth together. You can continue to follow me on my journey at JimSchriner.com. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, and I hope to see you on the road. I'll see you next time. Hi, Jim Schreiner here. You can follow me on my journey defending my faith. I can't tell you how excited I am in Orlando, Florida, again at the Buddhist Temple, and I have the pleasure and honor to be talking to some Buddhists here, especially some leaders. And I'm going to probably screw her name up, but we've been blessed today to be with Miao Gong. Am I close?
Very close.
Very close. Okay. I got it really close. I didn't tear it up too bad. I was practicing earlier.
You're doing fine.
And you came in from Taiwan, correct?
Taiwan.
She's all the way in from Taiwan, not just for me, but she came here to talk with us. She's actually this evening going to be talking about her journey, and that's what we're going to be talking about. And I'll tell you, I pumped up people. I've been talking about this all along on our YouTube channel and stuff, and I'm very excited. So let's get started. I prefaced you earlier, as I asked everyone, in April of 2018, my wife passed away. I was blessed and honored that I was married to an angel for 25 years. And when she passed away, it's as if the door of my house became a revolving door, and people were coming in and paying their respects. But religious leaders from all over came around and was asking me my belief and where did she go. And so I started asking people 2 questions. I said, when my wife died, where did she go? If you believe that she had a soul or a spirit, where did she go? And then the second question was, well, where did we come from? So we can take them first and second. You can answer the first question first or the second. Which one do you prefer? Where did we come from or where did we go?
Well, whichever is fine.
You choose.
Yes. Well, very sorry to hear about your wife.
Thank you.
But actually, there's no need to feel sad. When you ask where she has gone, I guess I could probably try to answer it from the perspective that she probably came back already.
Okay.
Yeah. As we speak of rebirth in Buddhism, chances are that in this lifetime, it wasn't your first meeting.
Okay.
Yes, and
No, wait, it wasn't our first meeting, her and I?
Yeah, meeting between you and your wife.
Okay.
Right, it probably wasn't the first meeting between you and your wife.
Oh, wow.
Maybe, as you speak of rebirth, we come back from lifetime after lifetime of existence.
Okay.
Either as human beings or to go into the Buddhist cosmology. There are basically 6 spheres within which we become reborn again and again.
Okay.
And on a more complicated level, maybe 10 spheres altogether. But the basic idea is that we come and go between the 6 realms of rebirth, either as human beings, and sometimes if we do well, we go to heaven.
Okay.
Right? And the
So
so-called
wait, let me
heaven,
stop there. So, okay, go ahead. I didn't know. Okay, you're going to it. So the theory is that there could possibly be a heaven, according to Buddhism, that she could have went to.
the so-called heaven is a little bit different from
The Christian
how
belief,
it's
right.
actually seen in the West.
Okay.
But certainly the idea is all the same, that in the fact that we're no longer bound to our physical body.
Okay.
We go to a spiritual room where there is bliss and happiness.
Oh, wow.
Right? That's probably the most ideal.
Okay.
But certainly we go up and down in that realm. Right? But let's not go into that. But what I'm trying to say is the fact that the Buddhists believe a rebirth is actually determined by what we have done in the past.
Okay.
And also,
In the past lifetimes.
the past could work in different ways.
Okay.
For example, your past could be when you were young,
Oh, okay.
when you were first born, right? And your past can also be in your previous lives,
Okay.
if you're willing to to take in that idea, of course. And so it works either from your past lives or in your past, in your present
Gotcha.
life. And so whatever it is that we have done in the past will determine where we go in the future. And so I guess that's the basic idea.
Okay.
Right? But even as we speak of the present life, it has some basic stages. And we understand it as birth, old age, sickness, and death.
Okay.
Yeah. But to understand it that way, it seems like death is always the final destination.
Okay.
But it's actually not true. It's actually not true. We, as human beings, when we are already in this world, we should really look at old age, sickness, death, and then rebirth.
And rebirth.
And so in that case, I will answer the first part of your question, where your wife may have gone to. And I would say, if your bond is strong enough, right? Maybe if you had now to meet each other again, or to never be separate.
Which we did.
Yes. And so chances are your thoughts and your love could draw her back into this world.
Wow.
And so you could meet again, either in your present life or in your next life.
Well, let me stop you there because a couple of interesting things happened. Shortly after my wife died, my sister-in-law had recorded some videos that my wife was just speaking to me. And we had recorded a bunch of videos for other people, but I didn't know that my wife had actually recorded videos just talking to me. And obviously my sister-in-law sent me those like a month later, and I was a mess, because here my wife was just talking to me. And in the video, she said, whenever you see a dolphin or whenever you see a butterfly, that will be me. And at the time, I'll be honest, I didn't know where I stood as far as a belief, was that possible, until I started to come here. But interestingly, about a month after that happened, I was visiting some friends in Kentucky, and I was sitting outside with one of Julie's best friends, and obviously we were talking about my wife. And I have the video and pictures of this, but while we're talking, a butterfly landed on my head and another one landed on my hand. They didn't land on anyone else. They didn't land on my friend, and there were no other butterflies, but they landed on me. And obviously, I broke down, I was a mess. And that started to, I started to tell my friends about that, and some of my friends were very close-minded and said, oh, that's just a fluke, or that was an accident. There's butterflies outside my house all the time. And I said, but it just struck me as being very funny or interesting that it wasn't before that, my wife had mentioned that. And as I'm talking about her, these butterflies landed on me. And it really opened my eyes. And then it was like a week or two later when I came here and met Melinda, and I started to come and educate myself on Buddhism. That moment is what changed and opened my mind. And I wanted to try to understand, was that possible? Is it possible that could have been her? Because it actually felt to me that she was present. But until that day, my mind was closed and I didn't believe that was possible. Now I tend to believe that it not only is possible, but it did happen. So it goes exactly along. So it's possible then that she could have in fact came back partly as a butterfly.
Well, I guess you are the only one who can probably tell if she wanted you to feel it. But as we speak of rebirth, and what goes on into that endless cycle is what we call our consciousness. And you can consider rebirth as some kind of immigration where your consciousness then migrates into other physical forms of existence, which makes what you have said totally possible, right? But then what determines where we go in our next existence are two things. First is our karma. As the Buddhist belief of karma means deed, right? What we have done in the past, then it will draw us into our next existence. But there is another thing that will draw us into our next rebirth. That is, if your thoughts are strong enough, the power of your vows, the power of will.
Wow.
Yes, will determine where you come from. Right? So in the Chan stories, you hear stories about these spiritual practitioners called Chan masters, right, becoming reborn as a worm inside a peach because he had loved peaches so much in his previous life. Right? And when he passed away, that was all he could think of.
Wow.
Right? So that's the power of your mind or your will that would determine where you go. Right? And so we believe that when your love for somebody, or a less attractive term called attachment to your loved ones or family is that strong, certainly they're going to come back and see that you are okay in their absence. in many different forms. So if you felt her, then definitely that was probably still your connection. And again, as we say that life never dies, she never died. She never died in spirit.
Okay.
Right? And so that
Her physical
consciousness-
body
the
died.
physical body dies because every physical body dies.
Right.
Right. But what she has shared with you gets taken into her future.
I see.
Yeah. And then in your future, I'm sure, when your vow is strong enough, you're going to cross paths again if your love for each other is strong enough. And we understand that there's a saying that she also lives in you.
Right.
And she does. Right? What she has wished for you will continue to live. And what you have for her will remain that connection between you and her.
Well, you're going to make me cry in a second. I got to be careful. Because one of the things that I've been struggling with here lately is obviously I'm trying to move on. And she wanted me to be happy. She wanted me to move on. And she actually, before she even died, she was hoping that I would find love again and I would find another woman and I would move on. But I still feel so connected to her, literally connected to her, that I can't move on. And I've went on dates and stuff and tried to meet, and I've met some wonderful women, but I can't move on because there's a part of me that just so feels, and most people can't understand it because I don't think they experienced the love that her and I had, for 25 years. We never had an argument, not one.
Oh, wow.
Not one. We were so connected that it was scary. Really scary. We were best friends. We were best everything. And she literally was my world. And when she died, it literally felt like a part of me went with her. And I thought I would be okay. And I tried to move on, but I can't because there's a part of me that it just feels like I'm so connected to her that I can't let it go. And and it's weird. I try to explain to people, I don't want to let it go because it actually makes me happy. It makes me feel connected to her. I feel her. So and those are my good days. I'm like, you know what? I'm content. I'm happy. I feel connected to her. So, I think a part of me wants to stay in that space, I guess is what I call it, because I still feel so connected to her. And even before I met you guys and before I came to the temple, there's a part of me that I don't know. I struggled with. I was in Catholicism and Christianity, so we've been all the different religions and stuff. But part of me knew and still knows that when I pass, that somehow her and I are going to be reconnected. Can't prove it, it's just a theory, but it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like that not only am I connected with her now, but when I pass, somehow her and I will be connected again. So.
Well, as we speak of lessons in life, right, Buddhism gives us probably 8 of the hardest lessons that we have come into this world to learn. The first 4 are what I have just mentioned: old age, sickness, death, and then becoming born again. Right? So that endless cycle actually makes it a challenge for us to experience each time again and again.
Right.
And the other 4 comes as separation from loved ones and being stuck with the ones you hate. That's the 6th one. So I would say you're very fortunate
Right.
in a way that
Right.
you're going through that lesson of separation from loved ones with good memories, right? And then we also talk about this idea of attachment to the self, which becomes an illusion of reality. That's probably the most difficult lesson that we have to overcome.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that it's a very complicated story, but you might imagine that when we feel that all that we have experienced is the only thing that we can hold on to.
Oh, I see.
And then letting go becomes an even harder process.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, on top of what you have said, separation from loved ones and so on. Right? And so to see it as a lesson that your wife may have come to teach you, right? Everything comes on 2 ends of the spectrum when there is togetherness. Right? And eventually what we'll have to feel and learn as a part of the lesson is separation.
Yeah.
When there's joy, on the other end of the spectrum, there's
Right.
always pain and suffering.
Right.
Right? And so Buddhism has taught us that we can never only get one end. There's always the other end. in order to make that experience complete, for you to realize that what you are feeling may not last forever. And what you're feeling now, being the fact that it will pass eventually, the whole process, again, is how you may be able to let go. Yes, I know that this may be a bit difficult to say to you, right? And I don't think it's a good condolence to anyone who has just lost their loved ones. But really to go through that complete journey of having and then letting go somehow makes you a much stronger and a much gentle person at the same time. And so let's just say there's no need to think about whether you should let go or hold on to her. Right? When the thoughts come to you, just let them be a part of you.
Right.
Yeah, until one day you feel ready to move on. But then if you're not, then maybe dwell into the messages of love and kindness that your wife has taught you, perhaps.
Right.
Yes, and we would say we all come here for a certain purpose in life. But you may be surprised that most of the time this purpose is not for the self.
Right.
As Buddhism talks about loving kindness and compassion, right? It brings us onto a higher and selfless level of altruism in the fact that perhaps it can help for you to think about the fact that the pain you're going through now, or the sense of loss you're going through now, is going to be something that you can help people who are going through a similar experience in the future.
It's amazing. Even I'm going to close that in a second. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, I'm going to ask another question. But it's amazing when you said that, because even on this trip to Florida, the universe, whatever you want to call it, brought someone into my life that literally the week that my wife passed, their mother passed, and it was as hard on them as when my wife passed. So it was as if the universe brought us together, because we had such a commonality that we both lost the two people that we cared for probably most on the planet. And it was an opportunity for us to bond and share stories and that type of stuff. So I won't lie. I mean, I've in my lifetime, I've always been probably more compassionate than most men. I'm not wired the way most guys are. I've ever been loving and caring. I mean, I literally took care of my wife. She was bedbound for years, and I loved taking care of my wife. I just did. I worshipped her. And so I was a very compassionate man, but she taught me so much about kindness and compassion and love. And her whole purpose in life is every day she got up and just said, I just want to go out and give stand-up hugs. That's all she wanted to do. She was by far the most amazing woman I've ever known, and I was honored to be married to her. So the lessons that she did teach me, I know that I'm teaching other people every day, and I'm proud of that. So fantastic segment. We're going to take a quick break, and when I come back, we're going to ask one more question. All right, Jim Schreiner here again. We're back to Defending My Faith. I hope you stay tuned to that first episode. That was fantastic. It was exactly what I was looking for. And I think after listening to that, I think I can probably answer the first question, but I would like you to anyway, because we talk about this cycle. So according to that cycle, and according to your theory, where did she come from initially? So we know as pre-birth, death, and life, and sickness, but where did she originally come from? And interestingly, when you watch the opening of the show, that's kind of how it all got started, is because I held up a prop, and I said, imagine that it was my earbuds actually, and I said, why don't you imagine that these earbuds represent the first spark of life? That's literally what the world is fighting over. No one can seem to agree, where did that first spark of life come from? And when it dies, where did it go? And that's how this thing got started. Because if you look back through organized religion, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, it really doesn't matter. And then you go to atheists. No one knows for a fact where that first spark of life come from. Atheists at least will say, we don't know. Where every different religion says, oh, we know, because it says it in our book. You got the Christians, Catholicism, and then I interviewed some what do they call it? Islam, and they all have the Quran or the different books, and they'll all point to their book and say, well, we know where that first spark of life came from. Well, you don't. You have a theory. And that's what I've been asking people. So according to your belief system, where did that first spark of life come from?
Okay. Well, my answer could disappoint you.
Oh, okay.
Because there are a couple of questions which the Buddha refused to answer.
Oh, I see.
And what you have just asked happens to be
Be one of them. Okay, all right.
Yes. Well, the Buddha did not go into the investigation of how the world began.
Okay.
Instead, his way of answering this question will be the fact that Buddhists don't look at life in a linear fashion.
Okay.
And by linear, it means we tend to look at a point of start that leads to a point of end.
Got it.
Instead, Buddhists provide a circular aspect on life, a circular perspective of life in the fact that certainly there is a starting point for one lifetime. When there's an end point for another lifetime, it doesn't go from here to here. It goes here,
Yes, sir.
and after you end, you go back to that again,
see.
again and again and again. And so in other words, as we try to explore where did life begin, and we will tell you that life began in a beginningless time,
Okay.
beyond our comprehension. As we say that, the forms of existence goes way, way, way into the past. And it probably takes several billions of lifetimes for one to ever become a Buddha, quote unquote. Yeah, so that's how long time can actually be. And so when the Buddha, as a historical person, actually was asked that question, he refused to answer it. And the reason for his refusal partly came from what I've just said. And secondly, what he wanted us to focus on, rather something more than a metaphysical discussion on where this universe began, but rather to come back into reality to think about, okay, instead of asking that question, now we can look at where we are headed to make this lifetime also complete.
I see.
Yes, and your question always reminds me of my grandmother, who was a very pious Taoist, who chanted the Buddha's name for a better birth. And so when I was 8, she came up to me and she goes, "Oh, you better be chanting the Buddha's name well." And so I asked her why. She goes, "If you chant Buddha's name well, then you will die a good death."
Okay.
And so that really confused me because I was 8. So I turned to my grandmother and asked her, sure, I believe you, right? I would like to die a good death in the future because I think that's probably one of the most important lessons in life. But before I do that, I asked my grandmother, could you perhaps teach me how to live better?
Okay.
Yep. So that question of where we come from and where we go certainly is very intriguing. But that historical figure called the Buddha rediverted our attention into this present life to ask us, what purpose or meaning do we wish to fulfill in this very moment? If you can find answer in this stage of your existence, this answer will extend into the endless future. And then it would naturally fit in with everything that you have done in the past.
And really then that beginning point and the end point doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter
Because if you're focusing on just becoming a better person and focusing on this lifetime, this moment, this day,
That's
it
right.
really doesn't matter where it came from or where it ends because you should be focused on now anyway.
Because certainly it might be right to say that there is no time. Every concept is created by the human conscious. Right? We tend to experience something, then we conceptualize that experience, and then our future behaviors tends to be determined by that conceptualized experience. And in the Buddhist cosmology or Buddhist psychology, it's doing the exact job of helping us break down that conceptual concept and say, hey, what happens when we are beyond the concept of time?
Okay.
How do we exist? And then it draws our attention back to how we're feeling in that very moment, and to make some sense out of that present moment experience. And I guess that point becomes probably the most important thing to you as Jun, the most important thing to me as Miao Guang right now. Right? So to make every moment count will probably be the most important lesson that the Buddha wants to teach us. Because as you talk about making one point, making sense, when it's significant, right, it becomes a starting point to an endless significant future. But the moment you forget to make purpose out of this moment of life, then everything in the future awaits for you to find that moment of significance.
That makes so much sense. That's pretty amazing. You said I'd be disappointed. I'm not. I'm far from disappointed. That was beautiful. It's funny how but my wife was terminally sick for a long time, and she was sick most of her marriage. So we were blessed that we actually lived as most people claim to every day. We tried to put in as much fun. Our life was an amazing journey. Even though she was disabled, we traveled the world, we traveled the country, we hiked the Grand Canyon, we skydived, we scuba dived, and we lived. And it was because early on I knew that she wasn't going to be in this world that long. And I wanted her to experience everything that the world offered. So luckily I was financially able to, and I provided a great life for her of enjoyment. And we had so much fun and happiness because we did. Every day we tried to squeeze as much life into every moment that we could. We weren't even Buddhists, but we understood that concept. So that's why it sounds so great to hear, because it's almost as if we were Buddhists and didn't know it, because we were practicing that philosophy. So according to that then, and I'm assuming another question that you guys don't answer is deity. What do you believe as far as a God? Because if you look at, all the different religions believe that there's some form of a deity, of a God. Mm-hmm. Does Buddha address that at all?
The Buddha actually presented this idea of the multiverse to
multiverse.
Multiverse, yes. Multiverse. It's the same thing.
Yep.
Yes. I think we're talking about the same word.
Yes.
And by multiverse, it could be our so-called parallel universes, or multiple worlds that coexist at the same time. So there's a very beautiful image in one of the Buddhist sutras that tells us, okay, this is what our universe looks like. We live on the earth, right? And the earth is part of the universe that could look like a jewel, right? But the idea of the multiverse is that there are many other universes that coexist around it. And somehow all of these universes are connected to one another. And so you may imagine the diagram of a nerve cell. Or you can now imagine the idea of the internet. Yeah. I mean, the internet from 30 years ago set stations, that are wired to the phone line. But at the end of that wire, it leads to the server, to other people. And now we have the cell phone, right? And it makes it even more complicated because the cell phone becomes an individual point that connects us to one another. Right. And so that idea of the multiverse can be presented with that image. It's such a complicated web of existence. And at the same time, we are all interconnected. And by interconnected, it means you and I reflect each other's life in one way or the other. And so do the viewer's life as they watch us talk, right? And then become connected to us in one way or the other. But the interesting thing is, when you light up your universe, it's like a pearl that also reflects this light onto the other universes, as described in the Indra's-net. And so you may imagine the moment your life lights up, you also light up other people's life.
Wow, that's cool.
Yes. And so as we talk about this moment of life, right, there are two ways for us to look at it. If you're looking for closure, right, and we do it through the idea of repentance. And by repentance, the Buddha's teaching encourages us to let go of the past by apologizing to those whom we have wronged. Right. Because karma works in a very basic idea of what goes around comes around.
Right. We've all heard of karma, right?
Yes,
right.
But it sounds like a punishment.
Right.
Yeah, it's always kind of intrigued me of how Buddhism poses itself as a punishment or as something that scares people out of doing bad.
Right.
But it isn't. It really, through that idea of the fact that what you do affects your future, then it should tell us that we have that endless potential to create a better future. Right. And so in other words, the future lies in our hands. I would say the most important idea of karma, first of all, if we ever understand the fact that what we are now is a result of our past, then it's a good lesson of letting go through repentance, right, by apologies. But secondly, another way to look at life through that very core idea is to be grateful for everything that has made us who we are. Right. And mind you, it's not just the good things. Right. Yes. As the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah. Right? Any moment that you sense loss inspires a heart that cherishes. any moment that you sense cruelty and unkindness,
Yeah.
it inspires kindness and compassion. And again, to create both ends of the spectrum,
Yeah.
you know, the concept of dualism, once again, that's how we see the teachings of Dharma from a more positive perspective, by saying that, yes, in this chance, if life lies in our own hands, we make that choice to become who we are, right? What we did determined who we are, or who we were, but it doesn't mean it's set. And I think a proper understanding of the Dharma, you know, in causes and conditions, in saying that we all coexist interdependent of one another, then we learn to be grateful for what our friends and loved ones have done for us to make us who we are.
Right.
And then we apologize for anything that we have done to wrong them or to hurt them. And I think these would be a nice way to, you know, to have a closure, and again to find a fresh start from this moment onwards, to make sure that you have a better chance at not repeating the same mistake
Right.
or the same pain based on this very concept of karma or deed.
Well, what's crazy is, I mean, as I said earlier, I was born and raised with a good parenthood. I had a wonderful mother and father, and I think I was a good man. I had a good heart, but this journey, especially caring for my wife and then her ultimate death, has molded me into a more loving, more compassionate, more just caring person. Just like what you said, it's amazing how it's really transformed me into the man that I am. And now I feel like that I actually, because of that experience, have so much more to offer the world. And even with this show, you know, I said, the reason for this show is real simple. I said, I just want people to watch and say, you know, just because someone's on a different path than I am, or a different path than you are, we're all struggling to find our way. We're trying to find our way to a better place, and we need to learn to respect their opinion, respect their path. If it's not like mine, and they need to respect mine. We got to find some common ground so we can just be kinder to one another. Stop hating someone just because they don't agree with you on something, or a philosophy, or an opinion. And that's really how I came to this. And so her dying, obviously, I think has molded me into a more caring and compassionate person. Is the one thing that I know that I can take from this. All right, last question. In different organized religions, which is where I come from, it's the only thing I know, you know, if you look at that, people believe that, Christianity, for instance, they believe that someone was actually talking to deity, and that's like they always say the Bible was the inspired word of God, and the same with, you know, all forms of religions. Oh, their book is the inspired word of God. The original Buddha concept, where was the inspiration? Where did it come from? Did he channel the universe? Did he channel a deity? Where did the thoughts and images of, I mean, he has an amazing library of knowledge. Was that inspired by the universe or a deity or something? Where did that come from?
I think I haven't answered your previous question about whether the Buddhists believe in some kind of God or deities.
Okay.
Right? And so by that idea of the multiverse, there are different realms of existence for all beings. Right? And so certainly in Buddhism, the existence of deities or gods, but not the Christian God, is actually accepted in the fact that certainly when you rise above the realm of form, right, you're able to exist in a more free form of existence called the heavenly beings, or what we call the deity kings, who maybe have a little more power than us to kind of go on with life. And so yes, we do believe in the existence of these. But going back to your final question, I would say, in terms of where they come from, you know, they, again, are a result of their own mind's creation in becoming who you want to be. And so the Buddha wasn't a creator of the universe. He only discovered what existed in the universe, including the truths and the way of existence among all levels of beings. And so when he talked about this, so the idea is that as you speak of the truth, the rest of the universe resonates with your mind. And your mind draws those who reflect your thoughts to you. Okay. You know, this happens among human beings. You know, birds of the same feather flock together, right? And so when this truth was uttered by the Buddha, we would say the heavenly beings, human beings, right? And even more, the bodhisattvas, the Buddhas, the arhats, and so on, understand that this was what they needed to learn. And so they gathered to listen to the Buddha. And so you will see this legendary gathering on the Vulture's Peak,
Okay.
as described in the Buddhist Sutra, happens on a mountaintop in India. But the fact that when the Buddha sat there, he didn't just sit with human beings, right? Celestial beings came, and rained flowers in celebration of the Buddha's truth. And the Devi Kings, or we call the heavenly protectors, also appeared to support and to protect this gathering. And then you will talk about other Buddhas from the multiverse and the Bodhisattvas who also wanted to reflect upon the Buddha's saying of the truth, then existed. Okay? And so to go into either the Amitabha Sutra or many other sutras that have been recorded as these Dhamma gatherings, you may see how it's like basically a spiritual feast for anyone or whatever form of existence wanted to agree and to reflect on the Buddha's teachings. So they were already there. Nobody created any of these.
Right.
There was no creator. But if we're really looking for one creator, it's always the power of our minds. We create so many things in this world. Right? We create material things. We create connections between the self and others. Then we create our beliefs. And so in one way or the other, you may even say beliefs are something that human beings have created but have existed all alone. We can't explain our belief in God, right? But it worked for so many people, therefore it's there. But there's never that proper explanation of why so many of these beliefs existed, except that in most cases it all came through the presence of one messenger. Whether Jesus, or Muhammad, or the historical Buddha himself, or in Hinduism you talk about Krishna, right, or Vishnu, who existed as heavenly beings. And so these are figures, very important figures who convey the message. Yeah. And so just a few days ago, Melinda was talking about how she read a very touching message by our founder, Venerable Master Xing Ying, who founded Fuguangshan as an organization that serves more than 3 million people around the world in 200 cities. And he says, I'm not a Buddha, but I am an instrument of the Buddha.
Right.
And so in the same way, we all are. And who is that Buddha? It would be very difficult to explain because there are so many Buddhas. But nevertheless, whether it is the pain you're going through or the joy that you have gone through, right? We are all equal among one another. We are all equal living beings who are traveling down the same path in uniquely different ways.
Right.
That's all there is to it. But I would believe the goal in the end will be the same: love and compassion.
I love it. Fantastic. It's such an honor. Pleasure.
Thank you, Jim.
Before we close, I want to mention something here that she brought up, an interesting thing. I do a lot of wellness seminars, and I said science has actually shown, and I've seen the science, that your thoughts can actually slow down the aging process of the cells in your body. You can actually affect the cells of your body by your positive thoughts, and your negative thoughts can actually cause those cells to die. Well, what's interesting now, science has actually shown that your thoughts actually go somewhere and can actually go out into the universe. So not only is it a belief and a theory that the Buddhists practice, but science is getting very close to proving it. So your actually thoughts, your words and actions not only affect the people around you, but affect the universe. But think about that. I had a real good friend of mine that I interviewed on a segment. He probably had described it better than I did, but he said, Jim, I believe that we are tiny specks in a galaxy of solar systems, and we're going to go through a Milky Way, and we're going to channel across different atmospheres in existence, and we're going to come across different universes. And the way he described it just sounded incredibly beautiful. And again, science has actually shown that it could be possible. Anything's possible. So starting today, I teach people every day, use the mind. Think positive, be kind, compassionate. Share a thought, share a hug. Because another thing, hug somebody today has actually been shown to produce a happy hormone called oxytocin that has also been shown to give life to humans. And I believe it was one of the reasons why my wife lived as long as she did, because she was happy and she loved hugging people. So happy thoughts, happy smiles, and follow me on my journey defending my faith. I'll see you on the road. Hi, Jim Schreiner. I'm back on my television show, Defending My Faith. And I'm excited again. As you can see, we're still at the Buddhist temple in Orlando, and I'm with my friend Melinda Yeh. Is that correct? It was interesting when I first started to come to the Buddhist temple. She was one of the instructors here, teachers here, is that what you call it? That she actually taught Buddhism 101, and that's how I got introduced to the concept, and she was one of the first people here. I would encourage you, if it's not this temple, get to one of the temples, because no matter what you believe, as far as again, as you know from following me, I was born in Catholicism and in Christianity, and I knew nothing about Buddhism. No matter what you believe, what I can tell you is when you walk in the presence of this place, you'll be treated kindly with more compassion than I've ever seen. And the atmosphere and the energy that you feel here is truly life-changing. And again, even if you don't agree with everything that they teach, it's a profound experience. And I promise you that it will change your life as it's changed mine. So visit a Buddhist temple somewhere, because I think that you'll see that these people are probably the kindest, most compassionate people that you'll find. And I'm proud to call some of these people my friends. So let's talk about, I get this question all the time, and I actually interviewed some people here. Try to explain a little bit how you got into Buddhism. And if I'm not mistaken, your parents were Buddhist, but you were not a Buddhist at the time. Is that correct? So tell me how you got into Buddhism.
Okay, sure. Yeah, my parents have been Buddhist all their lives, and not that I wasn't Buddhist, I just really wasn't anything because I didn't really understand the whole concept of it. You know, they had gotten me to go to Buddhist services on Sundays, and I didn't understand the language. It was all in Chinese.
Oh, I see.
And so I really couldn't, you know, even ask questions or find out more, even if I wanted to. So how I got into it was actually in 2003. I was coming back home from college, and I was extremely bored. And my parents were watching Chinese soap operas, and I didn't understand what it was, you know, talking about. And my mom, knowing that I love to read, she always throws Buddhist books at me, and I usually never read them. Well, that day I was that bored that when she threw it at me and I had nothing else to do, I took it and I read the first page. And that was actually a book from our master, Venerable Master Sheen, and it was Buddhism Pure and Simple, and it was actually the 8 realizations of enlightened beings. And I read maybe one sentence to one paragraph of it, and I was just floored.
Hooked.
Yes, it was amazing. So actually took the book, went upstairs, and was really thinking deeply about it, and at the same time falling asleep. And so unbeknownst to me, I was actually in some, you know, went into some kind of meditative state. And then all I can remember was kind of falling asleep, thinking about the concepts, which was basically how everything is impermanent, and that nothing lasts for very long. Everything is just constantly changing. And so I was thinking about this, and meanwhile I was thinking about it, my parents live in Orlando, Florida, on the 6th floor of a condo. And at the same time I was thinking about this, the fireworks from Walt Disney World, Universal Studios, all of that started lighting up the sky as I'm falling asleep. And so while I'm thinking about impermanence, I see these beautiful fireworks and through the window, and they are just, you know, they go off and they're beautiful, and then they disappear.
Oh, I see.
And then they go off.
So it resonated almost like...
Yes, while I was thinking about it, you know, I was looking at it.
I see.
And so, and that's how all life is it comes and it goes. So I had it, you know, right in front of me, showing me exactly what I was reading. And then, so I was falling asleep. I saw this beautiful light. It was just a white light, and it was completely peaceful.
Wow.
And it was kind of pulling me. And when I read about near-death experiences, it kind of reminds me of that, just this beautiful light pulling me. And I felt like it was pulling me towards it. And as it was pulling me towards it, I felt my heart slowing very slowly. And I felt like if I continued following it, you know, I might die.
Oh, really?
And so, and as I was thinking this, I heard my parents' voices downstairs. And as soon as I heard their voices, I thought, oh, what if they came in the next morning and I had passed?
Oh, wow.
How terrible that would be. And as soon as I thought that single thought, I just came right back into my body and I came out of that state. And the first thing that I thought of, which just gets into the interesting, the first thing that I guess the light left on me was that 0 squared equals 1 squared equals infinity squared.
Okay.
And so if you know math, it means that 0 equals 1, which equals infinity, which doesn't make any sense and from a normal perspective.
This just kind of came to you.
Yeah,
then.
it just came to me.
That's what was left in your
In my
conscious
mind.
after this light experience.
After the whole light experience. And so it was, basically that 0 equals 1 equals infinity. And I was left the rest of the night, because I never slept that whole night, thinking about this. And people, when I tell this story, they always ask, why was the squaring part?
Right,
0
right.
squared. Well, if you think about powers, when you move from one dimension to another, you are actually going to the next power.
Okay.
So let's say you have the number 5, you square it, it becomes a square, it's 25. And then cube it, you go into 3 dimensions,
I see.
and it is 5 cubed. So you're changing dimensions as you go from one power to the other. So this light basically told me that no matter what realm you're in, no matter what dimension you're in, 0 and 1 and infinity are the same number.
Okay.
So that's what I got from it. Now, it took me many years to figure out what all this meant.
Okay.
Because basically I had to learn a lot about Buddhism to figure out what it meant. But what I came up with, which were some theories, was that once you have a 0, you actually, it's kind of like a point of view. Once you have a 0, if you think of a number line, you have all of a sudden you have positive and negative numbers. And so that viewpoint basically bifurcates all of reality into either things that you want or things that you don't want. And so, that's how, like, a mundane point of view. And so all of this causes either your joys or your sufferings in your life. Getting the things that you want or not getting the things you want. Getting the things that you don't want or not getting the things that you don't want. So it just kind of creates all of reality. And then the other side of it, the only way I could figure out how 0, 1, and infinity could be the same is if you think of a circle. So in a circle, any point can be the beginning point, and it could be the ending point, and it could be an individual point. And so only on a circle can you see that 0, 1, and infinity can be the same number.
I see.
Okay, so you take a point on a circle, that's the beginning, that's the end, and that's also one point on the circle. And so an enlightened reality would kind of look at things in that way. Instead of seeing duality of positive and negative, you see all things as kind of one, that they're all part of the same thing.
Did that tie in with you then about, we learned earlier about the Buddhism, journey of life, death, suffering, that it being in a circle. Did that come together at some point then? Did you see that what you were just talking about, the 0 and the 1 kind of married up together with the Buddhism philosophy then?
Yeah, that was, basically that point of view takes away the duality of everyday life, and that when things happen that you suffer from them. Because you see things as that's just how things are, that things are constantly changing. To me it did. But that's kind of how I got into, from that day on, I decided that this was going to be a part of my life, and I was going to do everything I can to learn everything about it and teach other people. So.
Well, let's talk about that real quick. Earlier, when you first started, there were 8 different, what did you call them? The 8 different things in Buddhism.
Oh, the 8 Noble Eightfold Path?
Yes. Okay. Can you talk freely about some of those? What are the 8?
Oh, you're talking about the 8 realizations.
Yes, that was it. I'm sorry. When you first started, there were 8 realizations, and I've heard of that, and I read it and stuff. But so, what are the 8 different realizations?
I don't have them all memorized.
Okay, all right. All right. What are the most important ones? What's the most important one?
I mean, that one, the first one was that is that all things come and they grow, kind of. They come to a peak and then they decline.
Okay.
And so in that first one, I know it talks about even great nations, even nations go through that cycle, but pretty much everything goes through that cycle. So we were just talking about even the Dharma is going through that cycle of getting to a peak and then slowly declining. But accepting that is the other part, being able to accept that. A lot of times our suffering comes when we can't accept that as truth.
Is one of the 8 compassion? Is that one of them? I don't know, one of the 8. What do you call them?
I really do.
Because I know for some reason that kind of the underlying.
15 years.
What's that?
It's been 15 years since I read it.
No, one of the underlying themes of Buddhism is, no matter who I talk to, is that there's such a compassionate culture. It's the theory. It's not even a religion. It's a theory. It's a philosophy,
right.
And their whole philosophy seems to be based on the fact that we just need to be more compassionate. Where does that tie in? How did that come about? As being so ingrained into the theory or philosophy of Buddhism, compassion. It seems like that it's just resonates.
Right. I think it goes back to the Four Noble Truths, which is a basic tenet of Buddhism. The first one is that there is suffering or unsatisfactoriness. And then the second one is the cause of that unsatisfactoriness is wanting or craving. And the third is that there's a way out of that suffering. And the fourth is the way out of that suffering. So I think when it comes to that suffering and unsatisfactoriness is such a part of life, and that knowing and understanding that everybody suffers creates that compassion. So all the suffering that you go through with your wife, or creates compassion for you to help others.
Right.
And so, like Venerable Melville was saying, there's that duality. There's that one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, and with that one end, you get the other.
Right.
And so, compassion is just a part of that.
You have to experience both of them. It's like, in the human anatomy, we talk about, there's always a muscle that pushes and one that pulls, and in the different theories in life, there's always opposing actions, and in the Buddhism, now in the understanding, you have to experience the positives and the negatives, because if you just experience all positives, I forget what I was reading the other day, and it said the suffering, it molds you, that's, my friend was telling me the story of this butterfly, and this kid was walking by, and the butterfly was coming out of the cocoon, and it would come out and it'd fall on the ground, and one day he saw another one do it, so he decided to help it, and he cut open the cocoon to help it, and then when he came back later, the butterfly had died, and what they had realized was it was that struggle. It was the work that he had to put in to get out of that cocoon. That struggle was what gave him the power to survive. But without that struggle, he helped him open. It didn't allow him to fully form and give him everything that he needed to fly. So by him helping him, it actually made it worse. Because it was that struggle that molded the butterfly into being a powerful butterfly. So,
I love that.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then so I said, and you look at my life, I've had some great experiences, and then I've had some horrible experiences, but it's molded me into the person that I am. And it's so funny that you look back in life, and love's that double-edged sword, because it almost, I'll be honest, and it's almost made me not want to love as deeply as I did with my wife, because the pain was so much that I didn't want to experience that again. So I loved her so much, and that was amazing. But then when she died, it hurt so bad that I didn't want to experience that pain again. So I've had my shield up that I really didn't want to fall in love with another person, because I didn't want to experience that pain again. I didn't know if I could handle it. So you have to look at life and say that you have to experience the good and the bad, and that's going to make me a better person. It's made me a better person, but now I have to tell myself that, as we learned earlier, that it's that ever-flowing cycle, that I just have to enjoy that journey. I have to enjoy that journey and accept the good and the bad, and it's just going to happen, But it scares you, because, like I said, man, I loved her so much that it hurt so bad, and I'm like, I don't want her like that again.
Well, I think in Buddhism, you go through that process over and over again with rebirths. You go through that process of loving and losing, and then eventually I think you find that there's another kind of love, and it's a more non-attached or non-conditional love, and it's basically a love for all beings equally, and seeing that everybody suffers in that way, and it creates that overwhelming compassion to teach others the Dharma so they don't suffer.
I see.
And I think that's what, you know, in Buddhism that people strive for in the end. You know, after all these rebirths where you love and you lose and all that stuff, you figure that out. So it's like the next step after that.
Early on when I met you before, you were telling a story about when your father recently passed away, your mother wanted him to go to another realm, and I didn't understand that, and most people watching this won't. So try to explain that. How's that happen?
Okay, there's a whole part in Buddhism called the Pure Land school, and it talks about a Buddha named Amitofo. And it comes from the Amitofo Sutra, which is a very different sutra because most of the time the Buddhist sutras, which are the Buddhist teachings, come from somebody asking a question.
Okay.
But for this particular one, nobody asked a question about it. He just started talking about it. And basically he said that there was a Buddha named Amitofo, and because of his vows, his deep vows. That's another thing in Buddhism is vows. Basically, a bodhisattva has such strong vows. They are so determined and have such good intentions for this vow to come true that basically it automatically comes true.
Okay. When you say a vow, you're not talking about a vow like a commitment to my wife as being a vow. You're talking about a vow.
No, like you know, like a deep promise that the vows that they make are immeasurable. Basically, the vows are like, I vow to save all the beings and how.
Oh, okay.
You know, to reach enlightenment. I go down there and I'm going to teach them until they reach enlightenment. So this Buddha named Amitofo, he created this vow that he was going to make this realm where beings can learn the Dharma and they never have to be reborn and go through suffering.
So I think they could initially get out of this cycle that we talked about earlier, the birth, suffering.
Yeah, that's actually kind of the point in the Dharma and in Buddhism is to get out of the cycle and reach enlightenment. Yeah.
See, that's what I didn't understand. Because earlier we were discussing that you just always kept recycling almost, regenerating, but now you're saying that there's a way that you could actually stop that, get out of that cycle.
Yes, and so that's enlightenment. That's
okay.
Yes. Well, there's different schools of thought. Okay, some the old school, which is Theravada Buddhism, the original Buddhist teachings talked about getting out of this cycle, reaching enlightenment. The second school is Mahayana Buddhism, and that talks about staying to help others and teach others.
I see. Right.
And so, so there's different schools, and then Humanistic Buddhism, which we are a part of, is kind of a branch of Mahayana Buddhism, but basically it's more about looking within yourself and working hard yourself, practicing yourself, helping others in this world to help others and reach enlightenment. So a more worldly view, and in your daily life you can practice, and you don't have to go to the mountains and meditate to reach enlightenment. So it's another branch.
So what does a person have to do then to reach nirvana? If let's say they wanted to follow that philosophy, that they wanted to get out of the cycle and they wanted to reach that realm, is it just being such a good person that you kind of earn your way out of it?
That's where the Four Noble Truths come in. So the Buddha talked about those Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering, that there is the reason for suffering, the way out, and that's enlightenment, the third noble truth. And then the fourth noble truth is the way out. And so basically, you can think of it as a doctor. He tells you what's wrong, and then he tells you that there is a cure, and then he tells you the prescription, what you need to do. And so the way out is called the Noble Eightfold Path, and it's, if you want me to list it, it's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right meditation or mindfulness, and right concentration.
And if you practice those throughout your journey,
yes.
But it could be multiple journeys.
Yes.
So you could have been in this cycle 10,000 times.
Yes.
And then once you, let's say, completed those, how many were there? 5? The truth, the things you just
Oh,
rattled off?
eight.
Okay,
Eight
once you, let's say, perfected those,
Yes.
then you, in essence, could earn your way out
Yes.
and reach nirvana.
Yes.
I got it now.
So that is kind of the point. Or you can stay back and help others reach it. And so really, there's no higher point of life than
Right.
to help others see this, because you know, as you practice, you start suffering less, and then you also see that other people suffer the amount that they suffer, and so all you want to do is teach and help them
Right.
out. That.
Like I say, it's kind of like a catch-22. You perform and do so well, you could actually almost earn a pass and get out. But if you're a good person and you're compassionate and you care about others, you really don't want to get out because you
Yeah.
could come and help other people.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a catch-22.
Yeah.
You know, are you being selfish and saying, hey, I don't want to do this anymore and I want to go to heaven or nirvana? Or do I say, well, I could really help some people, so I need to stay here and
So that's the difference between a Buddha and a Bodhisattva. A Bodhisattva stays and helps, and a Buddha reaches complete enlightenment. Now, there's...
Oh, no, wait, but a bonus. The other one, it started off as a Buddha? And that's what you called it, a bona fide?
A Bodhisattva?
Yeah.
So their theory is, which I think most people believe, that a Buddha has been a Bodhisattva for many,
Oh, I
many
see. I
times.
see. Many.
And then finally lets that go.
Oh, I see.
And then,
And got to nirvana.
yeah. got to
Okay.
Nirvana. So,
But a Buddha stayed back.
a Bodhisattva
A Bodhisattva stays back to help.
To help, yes.
I see.
And so their very last attachment is to help all living beings reach that highest goal. So,
And explain again why your mother wanted your father to get to the...
okay, so that whole thing is called Amitopa's Pure Land. So that's a whole school of Buddhism where
Okay.
there is that realm where you don't fall down into samsara, which is what they call those 6 realms.
Okay.
And you stay there, and you just, everything speaks the Dharma to you.
I see.
And
It's enlightenment. So I said you...
it teaches you everything. The birds sing it.
I see,
You know,
I see.
everything is teaching you, and so she wants him to be there. She does
I
not
see.
want him to come back.
No more suffering, no more pain. Just...
Yeah, he's just going to stay there until he learns all that he needs to reach enlightenment. So that's what she wants for him. But I think my dad's still attached to her. He
I
wants to
see.
come back.
Okay, I got it.
So I probably eventually they will, just learn together. Somehow
Right.
be born together and learn together.
And somehow that could happen, that they could actually be so connected that somehow in this rebirth cycle that they could be born, or would you say connected again somehow.
Yeah, I totally believe, that probably will happen because of their connection. So, that's definitely possible. So,
Cool. Good enough. Good job.
Yeah.
Hey, can't thank you enough for tuning in. That's another episode of Defending My Faith. Like I said, we're still down here in Orlando, and as you can see, the beautiful temple. If you ever get to Orlando, you have to come and visit this temple. I told you, it was a life-changing experience. I put it up there. It's probably one of the top 5 things that I've been able to experience in my life. I can't thank you enough for your continued support and belief in me, and continue to follow my journey. Go to my website, Defending My Faith. I'll see you on the road.